This is Carol from the STS. This is the Adult Cardiac Surgery Database webinar for October 7th. This is our monthly webinar. On the line with me, I have from STS staff, I have Catherine Holyfield, Leanne Jones, and Melinda Offer, who all of you know and love as our FAQ mailbox guru. And then for my QVIA, we have Rhonda Murphy, Jeanette, Jean, Joe, Melanie, and Paul Meehan. So we're going to get started here. See if I can scroll correctly. A couple housekeeping notes, and then we're going to get down to clarify something that came out of AQO on coronary artery disease. So make sure you're able to do polling when we get to there, and put your thinking caps on, because we really need to talk through this related to previous bypasses and stents to make sure we're coding these fields correctly. And we'll have an update from Joe on the IQVIA side, and then be sure to use your the Q&A function to submit your questions, and we'll get to those after the presentation. Just a quick update, all but one vendor has been certified on the risk model portion of the version 4.20.2 data specifications. That hopefully that vendor is certified soon. All the rest have been passed, and they should be pushing those updates so you can calculate risk inside your vendor software in the very near future. The version 4.20 training manual was updated prior to AQO, so you may want to take a look at that if you didn't get a chance to. Additionally, we had probably over 300 questions come in from, I think about 300 questions. I just have to go through and clean them up a little bit. Maybe it was less than that. Come in, Melinda and we answered quite a few on the during AQO, but we definitely want to get those answers out to you. So we we'll be reviewing those and providing some either updates in the training manual, but I think it would be nice if we just provided you with an Excel spreadsheet and the answers to the questions that were submitted, so we don't leave any question unanswered. AQO update. This AQO was our biggest AQO yet, including speakers. We had over 850 attendees. Minus speakers, it was over 800. This is double than what we normally have. Typically, we have around 400 attendees for AQO. STS will be looking at hybrid options for AQO in the future, so we can continue with this type of attendance and make it a viable option for people to join and get educated on without having to travel. But we are still having AQO in Denver in 2021. With that being said, be sure that if you did attend AQO, be sure that you watch all of the sessions and claim your continuing education credits no later than December 31st. The Cadmium platform is updated with all of the recordings. So all of the live sessions, the recordings from those live sessions are all posted on the Cadmium platform. If you want to go back and watch them, be sure to do so. It will be up for a year. So the Cadmium platform will be hosted for a year with all of the content from this past AQO. And I think that's just make sure you claim your credits sooner than later so you can get those certificates as you need them. Okay, important dates for adult cardiac. Today is our monthly webinar. October 21st, we have our adult user group call at 2 p.m. Then we have a monthly webinar on November 4th, adult user group call on November 18th. The reason why I went out this far is because I want to point out that the Harvest 4 closes on November 20th. So make sure you get your data in cleaned up. We have posted, IQVIA has posted a lot of new resources out on the IQVIA platform to help with data cleanup and walking through all of the various dashboards and functionality of the platform. So be sure to check that out. I also wanted to point out right now that I've received quite a few emails about folks unhappy about outcomes missing from the report. I just want to point out that what's available right now is the risk adjusted report, which is your star ratings and your NQF measures. So it's data that is risk adjusted. What's coming in the very near future, and I'm sure Joe and the IQVIA team will be giving an update on this, but hearing it from STS, I think makes it a little kind of solidifies things. What's currently available now is just the NQF and star ratings. What's coming in the very near future will be your benchmarked reports with all of the other variables benchmarked to STS and your like groups. That will include things like blood usage, your vent times with the STS and like groups, and other variables that you're using at your facility for internal QI. So that report is due out in the very near future. That's why it's not currently available, but it is coming. So I just wanted to clarify on that, because I know we're switching over to PDF and then you're feeling like, oh my gosh, everything is gone. But I promise it's coming in the near future. Okay, so let's get over to the coronary artery disease clarification. To clarify, to clarify, once diseased, always diseased is forever going to be, forever as of today, is the way that we're going to code coronary artery disease. Nothing is changing with that definition. So once diseased, always diseased is not changing. So we always consider a vessel diseased if it has any disease in it that was bypassed, or if it has disease that has a stent put in that is allowing blood flow. Because of the stent, that vessel is still considered diseased. Same thing if the vessel is ballooned, opened up, we're still, Melinda, correct me if I'm wrong, but we still consider that diseased. Any type of percutaneous coronary intervention, we call that a diseased vessel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so a graft for a bypass, a stent, or a balloon angioplasty are all considered, will all make that vessel always diseased for purposes of the STS. What we're looking for when we're going to classify disease, when we're going to say if something, not classify, but if we're going to quantify disease, we're looking at the myocardium and the blood flow to the myocardium. So the myocardium is the heart muscle. I'm kind of going to take this down in case these terms are not familiar to some people who may be new to this, to the database. The myocardium is the heart muscle. So we're looking at the blood flow that's getting into the heart muscle. We want to make sure that when we're going to code the percentage of disease, that percentage is related to the impedance of blood flow. So we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But what I mean by that is if the myocardium, if there's something impeding or making it difficult for blood to get down to the myocardium, that's the percentage that we want to look at. So this is just your normal heart, your aorta. You have your right coronary artery. This is your left main. This is your LAD. And then your circ breaks off and wraps around the backside of the heart here. So those are your three main branches that we talk about. And of course the ramus, and I think we'll get to the other section part in a second. Okay, next slide. So these are the fields that we're talking about. We're looking at if a cardiac catheterization was performed, and if so, the date, coronary artery disease or anatomy, disease known, once diseased, always diseased. Nothing is changing with that. That's how we've been collecting it in the database probably since the beginning of the database starting, and that's how we're going to continue collecting this field. Once diseased, always diseased. Number of diseased vessel. This is the number of diseased vessel, either if it's what are you using to figure out if this field 1155 is a yes or a no, how many vessels are making up this yes, and you could have 1, 2, or 3. I'm not sure why, Melinda, do you know why we have a none option here? Is that just if the information is not available, the sites are to code none?
No, I think that there are some patients that have no CAD, such patients that might just be coming in for valve surgery and have no coronary artery disease at all. That's why the none's there.
Okay. If you answer 1, 2, or 3 vessel disease, which could either be a current disease that is impeding blood flow to the myocardium, or if it's something that was bypassed or stented and blood flow to the myocardium is perfect, you're going to get, you would answer 1, 2, or 3, and then you get down to the current stenosis, right? So we're looking at the current level of impedance of blood flow to the myocardium. And I'll show you a picture in a second and we'll talk, but what we're going to fill out here is if it's greater or less than 50% current impedance to the myocardium. And then we're also looking, I just kind of, filled these out kind of stepwise, but they all are all used for the same, or all these fields are related to the the parents that are listed above them. So for the LAD distribution, greater or equal to 50%, if you say yes, then you get down to, this is, again, is the current disease that's impeding blood flow to the myocardium. Is it 50 to 69%, or is it greater or equal to 70%? And then you also have to answer, is the location of the stenosis known? And then we're going to talk, we have our native artery stenosis, which would be the native vessel. So you're not looking in a graft for this. You're not looking in a stent. It's the actual, what you were born with artery. Is there stenosis in that artery? That is not, or that is impeding blood flow to the myocardium currently. And then we have the stenotic graft. Did the patient have a previous graft and now that graft has stenosis in it? And a stenotic stent. Did the patient have a blockage and they placed a stent and now that stent, we have in-stent stenosis, currently in-stent stenosis.
And Carol, can I add one thing here? Because this has created a little confusion. So the area that she was just pointing out, the location of the stenosis, it is a select all that applies. So if you have a 60% stenosis in your mid-LAD, but you also have a stenotic stent in the distal LAD, you would select yes, native artery, and yes, stenotic stent, because you have stenosis in both of those locations. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And it is a select all that apply. So that's absolutely true. And you're going to select all that apply related to the blood flow to the myocard. If there's impedance to the blood flow to the myocardium, where is that occurring? Right, Melinda? You agree with
Correct.
that? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, so let's go into the next slide here. I have a couple pictures I want to show. So we'll just say that this is the LAD. This is the left main. This is the circ wrapping around the heart. LAD is the left anterior descending, so left anterior meaning front, descending. The circ is the circumflex. So here's the blockage. This is proximal. The area closest to the aorta is considered proximal. Not that you need to know this for coding section H, but this is helpful when you're reading the reports to understand. You can see the blockage is here, and then you can see distal. This is distal, and this is actually, we're looking at the flow to the myocardium here. So when you look here, you can see that we have a blockage. It looks like this is 100%. They're going to say it's 100% blocked. That means that all of the blood flow that's supposed to be getting to the myocardium distal to this blockage, it's not happening. So this myocardium, this is probably an acute MI, and this patient is probably going to have some cardiac tissue death. But what we're looking at is distal to this portion, distal to the blockage, and how that blood flow is occurring. Now, if you want to get proximal and you see that there might be, the LAD is our diagonals, right? So we have diagonal, is that right, Melinda? Diagonals?
Yeah, that's diagonal one coming off. So you know that above the diagonal one is the proximal LAD. Below the diagonal one is the mid LAD.
Great. So we're looking, so if the diagonal also is supplying blood flow to the myocardium. So this is not impeded. There's no impedance here. It's getting blood flow as expected. So that's going to kind of be in, you're going to have to pay attention to where the blockage is. If this blockage was stented or grafted, bypassed in a previous procedure, I'll show you a picture when we get there, but you're looking at the blood flow to the myocardium here, and we're looking here too. So next slide, we'll go to the question again is the blood flow to the myocardium currently compromised, or is there impedance there? So just a couple examples. This is your aorta. This is the left internal mammary. So then when they say lima to the LAD, this is what they're talking about. This is our LAD. We have a couple diagonals, diagonal 1, diagonal 2. This is going to be probably your diagonal 3, or the distal part of your LAD. We have over here, this is some type of vein graft. It could either be, it probably is a saphenous vein graft coming out of the aorta. So they would just dictate this as saphenous vein graft to the RCA. You can see here that there's a blockage proximal to where the vein graft is attached in to the RCA. There's nothing, there's no impedance of blood flow because we have good blood flow coming from this graft here. So the RCA and all of it, this is probably maybe the PDA, I'm not sure, but all of this is receiving adequate blood flow. There's no blockages listed. Same thing up here. So although this vessel, this RCA would be considered diseased because once diseased, always diseased, the current level of blockage, if you go back to if you go back here, so we're looking at the RCA, you would still code coronary artery disease known as yes. If we're just talking about the RCA and ignore what else was going on on that screen, number of diseased vessels, we would say 1 because the RCA is bypassed. So once diseased, always diseased. We're going to code 1 there. And let's just skip down to the RCA section. It says RCA distribution stenosis greater or equal to 50%. Again, this is the current blood flow to the myocardium. So that RCA, although it's diseased because it has a graft placed, the current level of blood flow is actually excellent. So there is not stenosis greater or equal to 50%. So we're going to code this as no. Melinda, do you have anything to add there for clarification?
No, I think you did an excellent job. The only thing I would say is that's why it's really important when you're reading your cath reports to, if you have, especially if you had a prior cabbage, to make sure that you read what the graft vessels say. You know, is the LAD alignment to the LAD patent? Is the SVG to the RCA patent? So you need to look to make sure that even though it may look like you have 3 vessel native disease, but after the cabbage, how are your bypass grafts operating? If they're fully open, they're providing flow to the myocardium, then that patient who's getting ready to go to surgery does not have any flow limiting issues to the myocardium. So it's really important to read those cath reports and specifically look at the patency of your grafts when you've had a prior cabbage in determining the current stenosis in the vessel.
Yeah, that's great clarification, Melinda. Thank you. On this other side, we have, this is the left internal mammary. This just happens to be skeletonized. The reason I know that is because there's not a fat pad around it. So we're just going to say that this is the left internal mammary, also called lima. We can see it goes way down here. This is the distal LAD. It's past the diagonal 2, the diag 2, diag 1. This is this is proximal LAD, diag 1. This is mid LAD, diag 2. This is distal. So we're going down the LAD. We have really great blood flow here. Oh, we have a blockage, but hey, that's okay because I have this graft that's coming down, and as long as this graft has excellent blood flow or does not have any blockages, then this really doesn't matter. It's still going to be considered a diseased vessel because of the bypass, but this blockage isn't impeding blood flow. It's getting excellent blood flow because of this graft. So although we have a diseased vessel, we don't have any actual blockages to consider. Anything you want to add there, Melinda?
No, that's great.
Okay, so now let's just look at the right side of the screen, which is going to be the lima to the distal LAD. And we're not going to forget about anything that's going on the right side of the heart. Just don't even pay attention to that anymore. Pretend like that is a totally different scenario. So again, we have the lima to the distal LAD. We have a really great blood flow regardless of this blockage. So this is what we're going to see. This is where your polling's coming in, so I hope you all are ready. This is the patient's history. The patient had a cabbage ×1, lima to the distal LAD. So here's your left internal mammary or lima going down to the distal LAD. These are your current cath findings. 99% stenosis to the mid to distal LAD. Yep, that guy's here. No significant stenosis in the proximal and mid LAD. These guys, right? This right here. Patent lima. Patent means that there's absolutely no blockage. The blood flow is flowing like you wouldn't believe, and it's there's nothing stopping it. No blockages. Patent lima, patent left internal mammary to the distal LAD. This one. And diagonals are normal. So I know that my diags, my diagonal 1, my diagonal 2, and if this is a diagonal 3 or the distal part of the LAD, these are normal. There's no blockages there. And no other coronary artery disease is noted. So I got everything else has great blood flow. This patient must be coming in for a valve. That's what I would guess from reading this report. So I'm going to open up the polling, and let's see here. Here are the questions. Does this patient have coronary artery disease, yes or no? Remember, once diseased, always diseased. I hope they can see my polling. Nobody's voting. Can you see? Oh, there we go. Once diseased, always diseased. If you answered yes to that question, how many vessels are currently diseased? I'm going to go back here. I'll just show you this. So we're looking here. So we're at number of diseased vessels. Is it none, 1, 2, or 3? I think this none is going to throw people off. We're going to have to talk about that because it's confusing me. So we have the next question. So your choices are none, 1, 2, 3, or the patient does not have coronary artery disease. If you answered yes to the patient has coronary artery disease and either 1, 2, or 3 vessels as being diseased, which vessel is diseased? Okay, pay attention to what's written here. And I think hopefully you can change your answer. The LAD is diseased and it is greater than 70% in the native artery. Remember, this is the current, what we're coding for this question, this LAD question for LAD distribution stenosis known is the current blood flow to the myocardium. Current blood flow to the myocardium. So remember, if the blood flow to the myocardium was stopped at one point, but there's a graft right underneath of it, the blood flow distal to that going to the myocardium, it's not impeded. It's getting great blood flow. And you can see that here. So the choices are LAD is diseased and it's greater or equal to 70. I don't know if you can see the rest of those choices, but it says the LAD is diseased and it's greater or equal to 70 and is, I don't know what that says. I think it says native artery.
Stenotic graft, it's the second one.
Sorry, stenotic graft, thank you. The LAD is diseased and I leave the rest of the fields blank. Or there is one vessel diseased, the LAD, because it was bypassed a while ago. We're looking at this, ignore the right side. There is one vessel diseased because it was bypassed a while ago. Once diseased, always diseased, but it is bypassed and there is no decrease in blood flow to the myocardium because the graft is patent. Therefore, I mark no to stenosis, or I mark none to vessels diseased. Let's see. Anybody else want to answer that? They're still coming in, so we're just going to wait a couple seconds. So again, remember, this is the bypass, and even though this is diseased here, we have this blood flow coming in, and it's actually feeding pretty well to the distal portion of the LAD, and it's getting really great blood flow to the myocardium. So we're looking at the blood flow to the myocardium. Yeah, so there's a comment here that the none for cath vessels does not throw us off. A cath can be performed and the vessels are clean. Yeah, but I want to show you something here that I think is confusing because you cannot get here unless the answer is to coronary artery disease is yes. And
well, yeah, but Carol, that 1155 is asking you if you know the anatomy, okay? So if you have a clean cath, you still know the anatomy, so you can answer yes. because you know the anatomy.
Oh, I got it. I'm sorry. You're
And
right.
then you
Sorry,
can go
Melinda.
down to 1170 and answer none if the vessels are clean or less than 50%.
I don't know why I was overthinking it. Imagine that.
You were way overthinking it.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So yeah, that's absolutely correct. So you could have a coronary artery disease known, even if it is yes, even if there is no disease present, you can still code yes, and then you would just code none here, right?
Correct.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to end the poll here. Let's see how we did. Yep, the patient does have coronary artery disease. The number of vessels is 1 because of this guy, this one here. And then if you answered yes in 1, 2, or 3, how did you code it? So most of the folks got this one correct. The reason why we're not going to code this as greater or equal, so let's open here. So we're going to code cath performed. You're going to fill in the date. You're going to put in coronary artery anatomy disease, no. You're going to fill in the date. And I think the reason, Melinda, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why we have 1145 and 1155 is that they could actually do a cath and not shoot the vessels, right? They might not shoot the anatomy. They could be doing it for another reason.
Well, generally speaking, that could happen, but generally speaking, what happens is you know the date of the cath, but you don't know the results of cath. So
like if
you
you're
have no
being
clue.
transferred from another hospital or something, you know the patient.
Or something like that, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And the number of disease vessels is going to be 1. For all of these questions here, we're going to, if there's left main stenosis, nope. It said that no other coronary artery disease is noted. LAD, so we do know that we had this blockage here in the LAD, but the current blood flow to the myocardium, we actually know that the lima to the LAD, distal LAD is patent and our diags are normal. So actually there is no blockage that we want to consider for coding this field. So we're going to answer no here. The RAMUS and the CIRC and the RCA are all no because no other coronary artery disease was noted. So I think hopefully that's helpful and clarify.
Hi, Carol. This is Leanne. I'm sorry if you some people have asked if you could share the quiz results, the polling results. I don't know if you did that.
Oh,
and I missed it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you. So we see that most 99% of the people said yes, we're going to code this as coronary artery disease. There's 1 vessel that's diseased, and the fourth choice of one vessel disease. But you're going to mark no to stenosis. Most folks got that right, but hopefully this is helpful so other people are able to get up to speed on how we're going to code these if there's no current impedance to the myocardium, blood flow to the myocardium. Here's another example of what the graphs might look like. Sometimes they can get real tricky. This is the left internal, this is the lima. They pulled down this lima. We have a radial artery, or RITA, which is a right internal thoracic artery, which is also called the mammary. Thank you, Melinda, for clarifying that. So you would have, this is a mammary coming off of the left and off of the lima, mammary off of the lima, and it's going down to the OM1 here. Off of this is another, this is this enticide going around to the circ, another bypass going around to the circ coming off of the mammary. And then this is the rest of the LAD and the rest of the lima, and it's going down to the distal LAD. So we're looking at the blood flow here. We can see there's a blockage here, but there's nothing below it that's being deprived of blood flow. And then we can see that here's where this lima is going to connect to the LAD, and we see that there's good blood flow here. And then here's just a cool picture I saw. I thought that would be kind of neat to share with the arteries and the cardiac veins. So you can see how that goes. This is the aorta, and then we have the 2 coronary arteries coming off. This is the left main breaking out into the LAD and into the circ. And then this is the right coronary. And these are the osteals. So if you do an aortic root or an aortic valve with coronary osteal reimplantation, this is what you're looking at here, these 2 guys. So this is the right coronary, and then I believe that this is probably the PDA, but Melinda, correct me if I'm wrong. The right coronary then wraps around there. So, or maybe that's the PDA and this is the rest. I don't know. But how's that? Was that good? A good review, Melinda? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that is PDA coming off, and it's a nice picture.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, for people who do root replacements with osteal reimplantation, this is a great pick just to show why they have to reimplant them, because they're attached right there. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a great picture.
And the aortic valve sits, I think it sits kind of right below here. So when we look at the data collection form and we're looking at, you know, a zone 1, like A, B, and C, it's broken down to A, B, and C, I think. This is where, you know, we're looking at the sinotubular junction, and then below the STJ, which is below this section here, I believe. So we can touch on that further in upcoming webinars. But hopefully that was helpful. I know we have some questions come in, but we'll get to those after IQVIA, Joe and Melanie give their update. And I'm going to stop sharing, Joe, so you can share your screen.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Let me get these slides up. Okay, get out of there. Give me just a second.
Yeah, no problem. We can see your screen.
Perfect. Just trying to get it in the presentation mode. There we go. All right, so we have a few updates for the next release for October, which is coming this weekend on October 10th, starting with a couple enhancements for the reports, and I should say ACSD, Harvest Summary Report, but we are implementing this for you guys as well. So this is STS 3662 and STS 3122. A couple updates coming to the Harvest Summary Report. One is to add the total number of cases, and the other is to add the surgery date range you selected. And so it's tiny, but in the screenshot here, you can see where that will appear toward the top of the report. So you'll see the date range and the total number of records counted. And then a few fixes coming as well, starting with a couple for the uploader, STS 3621. So this has to do with values that are giving you a critical error on version 4.20.2 records when you upload. So the VDV max and any of those other fields that might be coming in for this, those were changed in version 4.2 to allow you to submit decimal values, but our system was not updated accordingly, and so that fix will come through to allow you to submit those records. So if this is something you had seen and you had critical errors preventing you from getting some of these elements to get through, after this weekend, go ahead and resubmit those files so that you can successfully get those records in there. And then STS 3266. We're not seeing many reports of this, but there are occasionally circumstances where it comes up that the user submits an upload file and it's giving a red X icon as if it had failed, even though the upload was actually successful. So that should be resolved after this weekend's update as well. If you are experiencing that one, just know that your data is getting in, your DQRs are accurate, everything about your submission is actually fine. It's just that the display is saying as if it failed when it shouldn't. DQR update, STS 3894. This is a pretty common one, and we're glad to be able to get this fixed through this weekend as well. So you may have gotten error messages pertaining to operative mortality, the MTOPD variable. And so those error messages will be cleared up following this weekend's release. A couple in regard to the dashboard report. STS 2994, or you may have also seen 2219 or 2068. All three of these have to do with the internal memory artery used item displaying incorrectly in the participant dashboard report. So that should be resolved after this weekend as well. And then STS 3581 or STS 3387, both of these have to do with the graphs at the top of the dashboard not displaying correctly for discharge mortality, and those should come across in this weekend's fix. Finally, 3 updates in regard to the missing variable report, STS 3419. Looking at the logic for the Social Security number as it relates to the parent variable for Social Security number known. And so we're also looking into it displaying greater than 100% missing. So those should be fixed this weekend. STS 3603. MVR is indicating variables are missing, but values are present on the form. This has to do with dialysis, warfarin, and direct thrombin inhibitors. So that should be resolved. And then finally, SCS 1864. The missing variable report is showing variables, specifically initial extubation date and time is missing, even though it is populated on the form. And so that we did identify some situations where that was coming up, even though the data had been correctly submitted and entered. And that should be resolved over the weekend as well. So then just a final note there, we are looking into your ticket. So if anything that you have reported was not discussed in this presentation today, please do know that we are looking into those items. We are working to follow up and get some resolution to you or possibly a target release date for confirmation. So if you have reported something and you want an update, feel free to reply to your tickets and we can certainly look into those and reach out to you. But typically we will let you know when your items are resolved and provide updates as they become available. All right, and that will do it for my portion. I'm going to stop sharing if I know how. There we go.
Thank you, Joe.
No problem.
I thought I was sharing my screen. Okay. Make sure that when you are submitting any questions over to us in the Q&A regarding a support question from IQVIA to include your participant ID in all communications with us, and also in any communication that you're submitting to support, include your PID to both STS and IQVIA. Our resources, and then here's my information if you need to reach out, and we will go to Q&A. And I've been trying to answer some, I think. Let's see here. Have you set up a tutorial on using the new IQVIA dashboard? So we went through that back in September. I believe it was the September monthly webinar that we went through the dashboard. And also IQVIA has provided quite a few references on their platform regarding the dashboard and other functionality of the IQVIA platform. IQVIA, did you have anything to add?
That content can be viewed in the library section. So in the links in the gray bar that are on the left-hand side of the screen, if you click the library option, that context information, those training materials are located in there.
Great, thank you. When can we anticipate additional info on 3-year cabbage composite? Let's see, I thought. Okay, now you should be able to see the questions. When can we anticipate additional information on 3-year cabbage composite ratings, and when does it go into effect? My understanding is that will go into effect with Harvest 1 2020, but we haven't had any final decision on that, and we will be letting sites know when we do. And it will not be an additional composite rating. The 1 year is likely to go away and be replaced by the 3-year cabbage. When will we get the data quality reports with all the comparative fields information provided was very limited, right? So I touched on this at the beginning of the webinar and stated that these reports will be coming in the very near future. What you have now is the risk adjusted report, which includes your star ratings and NQF measures. The report that IQVIA will be pushing out in the very near future, like within the next few weeks, I believe, will be the benchmarked report. What will include things like your blood usage, your vent times, your STS comparator, and light groups. Next question. We have looked at the quarterly report and we definitely need some education on how to drill down using filters within the report. Will this education be forthcoming? So please check out the resources on the IQVIA platform underneath the resource tab, I believe is what Jeanette just said. And then also check out the webinar from, I believe it was the first week of September, on the STS webinar page for adult cardiac, and you'll see additional information there on how to drill down.
Yep, it's the library section, and
Oh,
there
sorry.
are specifics in there on how to do the drill downs and how to see that content. So
Great.
please do take a look at that. It is I believe it's the ACSD risk adjusted dashboard overview file in the library section, has all that there.
Great, thank you. Next question. How many people were not able to log in for AQO? So I'm not sure what that means. Folks, if anybody who had signed up was having issues logging in, the platform was available for a week prior to. Some sites were having difficulty logging in if they were using a VPN or not using a supported browser. If they were not using Chrome or Firefox, they were having issues with IE and Edge. But we were helping folks over the weekend, early morning Saturday, we were helping folks log in. So if anybody was having difficulty, hopefully they reached out, and I know that we had support helping folks, at all odd hours of the day. So, and I'm not sure if that would answer your question or not. Do we need to watch additional recordings, chronic lung, before filling out the post-AQO survey for CEs? Yep, so everything needs to be watched before you can collect your continuing education credits. A few of the AQO presentations do not have slides posted. Will these slides be available eventually? I thought we had everything posted up there, but if they're not up there, if the presenter is making them available to us, we will post them. Trace regurgitation can be abstracted as trace. Do we still abstract trace regurgitation as none is mentioned in AQO? Let me pull up.
Can I take that one, Carol?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the data collection form too.
So I think that there was a little confusion at AQO. If you have documentation of trace regurgitation, then you should code that as trace regurgitation.
And I can tell you where the confusion, if a surgeon had said that, I'm sure that came from a surgeon. Is that right?
It did, and I think I honestly think he was thinking of trace stenosis, where we don't code that.
Actually, what happened in the upgrade process, we had combined trace and none to be mapped into the same field because the same risk is associated with none and trace. When we showed it this is why beta testing was important. When we brought it back to the core group and others that beta tested, they said, no, we really want to have trace there because we look at that, we pull that out. So we added it back in, and that surgeon may not have been on that call to catch that. So we did have this mapped to a none value,
Right.
and that's probably why that happened. So apologize for that, but yes, please still code trace if you have that documented. None answer to number. Oh, okay.
That's correct, Bonnie. I get what she's saying.
If we have a patient who has 2 prior stents, both patent, we would code 2 vessel disease. That's correct. Then we would not code any vessels below. Will this flag an inconsistency upon harvesting? No, that's expected. It should not flag an inconsistency. If the cath note says proximal LAD occluded, lima graft widely patent, I choose no on the LM. So LM stenosis is left main. Oh, I see what you're saying.
I would, because the proximal LAD comes off the left main. So if the lima is widely patent to the LAD, then that means the left main's been bypassed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Next question. And if the right main is a chronic occlusion and collaterals is seen, what is put there?
We can't really account for collaterals, Beth, so just put the right main stenosis in.
Thanks, Melinda. If the patient does not have a heart cath but did have a CTA to rule out coronary artery disease seen in cases for valves, you can still use that. We still use that for coding, Melinda, correct?
Yeah, you can put the date of the CTA as the date of the cath. It says that in the training manual, and then you can put the coronary anatomy known based on that CTA. If the CTA says there's no vessel disease, then there's no vessel disease.
Great, thank you. Example, the RC. Yeah, I think we answered Beth's question, right?
Let me see.
The RCA is
Actually, I want to point that one out because it's actually a good. So Beth says you've got a proximal RCA stenosis of 75, and then you have a widely patent SVG to the mid RCA. And then after the SVG, you have a subtotal distal RCA. So the distal RCA would have a stenosis. So in this situation, even though you have had a bypass, the bypass came in at the mid, there was a stenosis after the bypass. So you do have 90% distal RCA native stenosis.
That's correct. And that's a great way to answer that, Melinda. And again, look at the blood flow being supplied to the myocardium. That's a great way to answer that. Thank you. I'm not sure I understand this. Why don't you just add?
You know what I think that is? I get a lot of people that don't understand current revascularization, that term on the data collection form. What does it say? It says something weird, something about revascularization, and people don't understand that that means current stenosis. See, you've got, what does it say there? Where does it say? Maybe it's in the training. It may be in the training manual. It's kind of a funny wording, and so I think that's where that's coming from.
Okay. On the RCA stenosis, do you code further down for distribution stenosis? No. So when what I was showing you on this one, when I got to that screen, when we got to this screen, I said ignore everything on the right side of the heart. So just forget that anything over there happened, and we got no other coronary artery disease noted. So if we were coding the entire thing, you would have coded further down that there was no stenosis because the blood flow is still here providing myocardium. Can you please show us on your picture where the ramus? I don't know is.
Well, I can answer that. First of all, only about 30% of the people have a ramus. So in that picture, there was no ramus. But if you look in your training manual, there's a wonderful picture of a ramus right there in the training manual. Ramus is normally you have two vessels coming off, and with a ramus, you have a trifurcation. Instead of a bifurcation coming off the left main, you have a trifurcation coming off. And only about 30% of the people have a ramus.
What's that even on this one?
No, it's in the training manual.
It looks like this. I don't know if people can see this, but this is your.
Oh, there it is. That picture right there, number 2.
Yeah,
same one I got in the training manual.
Yeah, this is the same one. This is your left main.
Yep.
This is your LAD. This is your circ. This is this little thing right here. This is your ramus.
All right, that's your ramus.
So it would be coming off right here. Okay. I couldn't watch the mitral video today. Is that something on my end? Yeah, you may want to check to make sure it's not being blocked at your side. We aren't having any issues on the Cadmium platform that I'm aware of. So you should be able to still watch it. Make sure you're using Chrome or Firefox to watch the videos.
Can I answer this next one?
Huh?
I can answer this next one.
Okay, if a wire is not able to be passed through a blocked vessel, so they went for a cab. A cab, is the attempt considered a previous procedure?
Okay, so the key here, Valerie, was that an attempted PCI? Was that a PCI interventional guide wire? Or was it just the wire to do the diagnostic cath? So that's your key there. If it was an interventional wire, then you had an attempted PCI, and that is a previous PCI.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Or is that
thank you.
too complicated?
No, it made sense. If the left main is 70% in the native vessel, and there is a patent lima to the LAD, and well, we don't know where that lima is going in the LAD. So that is probably going to be the clue to answer this question, is where is that lima going? And patent vein graft to the circ, do we still enter the left main diseases? Yes. I think it depends where that, graft is going, right, Melinda, where both of those grafts are?
No, in my mind, the circ and the LAD come off the left main, okay? So if you have a patent lima to your LAD, then the left main for sure has been bypassed. And if you have a patent graft in your circ, then for sure the left main's been bypassed, in my mind.
Yeah, I think this is I think you would probably want to confer, you want to talk to your surgeons about that to make sure you're coding it correctly. I can see a little bit of confusion as if so here's your left main. You have your LAD and you have your circ coming off. And what you're saying is that you have a native vessel from the lima, using a lima to the LAD. I don't know where that's going, but so you're having this, you would imagine that the left main would be up here coming down somewhere on your LAD. And if you're saying that it's proximal and there's no further disease down here, then yeah, I think that's correct. But if your vessel is here, your lima to the LAD is proximal, but then you have further stenosis further down, then I think that you need to consider that when you're coding these.
You always do. You always do. But I think the question here is the left main, since further down is basically the LAD or the circ.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because it bifurcates into those two vessels.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so if I state in the previous cardiac intervention if I state in the previous cardiac intervention as prior CABG or PCI, I should code number of diseased vessels in the hemodynamic section as at least one. If you have that, if you know, then yeah, you would code at least one, right, Melinda? But what if they don't have that?
Well, generally speaking, I like to give examples. So if the patient's had a prior CABG times 2, RCA bypassed, LAD bypassed. So you know the RCA's been diseased because it was bypassed. You know the LAD's been diseased because it was bypassed. And then if you had a PCI to the circ, well, that's your circumflex has been diseased. So in that example that I just gave, you have sequence 1170 would be 3 vessel disease, because once disease, always disease.
Great, thank you. Next question. I'm confused if she's saying you don't have to answer all of this. Yeah, and I accidentally marked, the patient didn't have a Ramus, and I accidentally marked that as no. You would have coded that as NA.
Yeah, for a Ramus, if most, like I said, most people don't have a Ramus. So if they don't mention it, they don't have one, NA. You can just put in not applicable because it's not there.
Yeah. Okay. Oopsie. Sorry, everybody. So this is how you would answer it. You would put no because you don't have any current disease. But the Ramus, of course, sorry about that, would be NA. The other two would be no. For location of stenosis, do we code only the highest percent of stenosis? That's correct.
Well, no, I think we need to break that down because that's the confusion that happened at AQO. So when you look at this, you have 50% or 70%. So you're gonna code the highest percent of stenosis in the distribution. Okay, so that's step 1. And then then it opens up on the form and it says, where are those stenoses? And are they in the native, or the graft, or the stent? That is a select all that apply. So
you're right, Melinda. I'm sorry about that. You're right. Wasn't looking at the word location.
Right, and so you can select more than one location. So if you have a stenosis in your native artery and you also have one in your stent, an in-stent restenosis, you can check both of those because both locations are involved for stenosis. And I apologize, that was stated incorrectly at AQO, and we tried to clarify that on the panel discussion later in the day, but I'm still getting a lot of questions about that in the FAQ mailbox.
Yep, thank you for clarifying that. When we were looking at location, I'm not sure why I said yes to that. We have the left main stenosis greater or equal to 50, and that's any part of the left main that's greater or equal to 50 if it's native artery, stenotic graft, or stenotic stent, but you're going to code all of these if there's, you're going to code all that apply if there's multiple locations of stenosis. So example, Melinda, if you have a stent, say we're looking at the LAD and you have a stent in the mid LAD and the current cath says that you have stenosis proximal to the stent, but that goes into the stent. So it spans across a native artery and it goes into the stent. You're going to code both of these, native artery and stent.
Yes, because it's both places.
Thank you. So the RCA, we didn't, that for the example we were talking about, we were leaving the RCA all alone. It was 0. It was patent. I noticed in the August FAQ that we can code an abdominal aortic aneurysm as previous other cardiac intervention. Does this include EVARs?
Yeah, we had to do that because when you get to the aorta section about the prior history of aorta intervention, if you were not answering it in 810 or 85, I can't remember what the sequence number is for that, Judy, but if you weren't answering it in prior CD interventions, you were getting this serious error when you tried to put it into the aorta section. So yes, that is correct.
And would they code EVARs as
other? I think it codes under other.
Other cardiac intervention, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. For the November 20th harvest deadline, what time frame of date is included? So I'll show you on the website here how to find that information. If we go to the STS homepage, we go to registries and then STS National Database. On this page, don't click into any of the databases. On this page here, under the homepage for the database, if you scroll down right below where you answer where you submit FAQ, we have this harvest schedule and information. You click on that. Adult cardiac is the first database that's addressed. So we're going to be in harvest 4. Harvest 4 will be ending 11/20, and it includes procedures performed through 9/30/2020. So this will be OR dates through 9/30/2020. Reading the IQVIA dashboard, gray is yes, blue is no, green is missing. What is white? White seems to be adding the blue, green, gray together, but it doesn't make 100%, so I'm thrown off. This is part of the post-operative events section. Maybe she's talking about a pie graft, IQVIA?
Joe, I know you were checking on this one. Have you managed to cross-check that yet?
I have, and I'm not sure. I was going to have to follow up with you because I don't know why it doesn't add up to 100%.
We'll check on this one.
Okay, thank you. Regarding COVID positive cases, will they count in 2020? If so, is it positive during same admission of surgery or within 30 days before and after that will exclude the patient? So we will be excluding all positive COVID patients, and here's the field here, this is temp code 7230. We'll be excluding any patient that is coded as harvest code 11, 12, 13, or 14 will be excluded from analysis. When we look at the preliminary data on this, it only 0.7% of all adult cardiac cases that was submitted for for harvest 3 for the cabbage population for PROC ID 1. Only 0.7% of cases had a yes selected. But what was interesting is that there were some, so that, it can go either way. Do we really want to exclude these cases or not? The surgeon leaders all, had a discussion about it. When we looked a little bit further, it was noticed that there was actually some sites who had positivity rates up into the 30%. So for fairness and to be consistent with what we've told folks when we started collecting this COVID data is that all patients who are coded as any yes are going to be excluded from analysis. We will provide an overview of data on these patients as a separate subset, but we will not be including these in your risk-adjusted outcomes. Jeanette, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you did great.
Thanks. If a specific vessel is not mentioned, such as a Ramos or the patient does not have a Ramos mark NA, that's correct. Melinda, if it's not mentioned, I mean, we assume that the patient doesn't have it because such a small population, or 30% isn't small, but a majority do not have a RAMUS. Are sites to assume NA? Or
we can use NA for also if it's not mentioned too. Like let's, for example, in the cath report, they don't even shoot the RCA and there's no mention of it at all. Well, you don't know for sure that there's no stenosis because it wasn't even shot. So you could put NA. I think NA could be used for people who don't have a vessel. Some people don't have LADs, or it could be used for whether it wasn't shot at all or you've got no mention of it.
Great, thank you. So we're going to end here. We're at time. This is a question for IQVIA. The trending rate is displaying only the stars, no data next to it. Is that a browser issue, and maybe they should submit that to IQVIA?
I do believe that the trend report does show only the stars that were calculated for the most recent year. Right now, we only have the star calculation for the most recent harvest. Once we are getting back future harvests from DCRI, then you will be able to see the trend information for those stars calculated for each harvest. So right now, it is expected that only the current harvest stars would be shown.
Got it, thank you. Thank you for clarifying, Jeanette. And I guess we're gonna end there. If you have any specific questions for IQVIA, please submit them to the IQVIA help desk. Any questions related to coding a case, Melinda would love to get those in the FAQ mailbox. And you could do that here. Right, Melinda?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I just love hearing from everybody.
Yeah. So under STS National Database page, if you scroll down, we have the clinical question request form. Make sure you choose the right version. So version 4.20 or version 2.9. And IQVIA, thank you for adding the participant ID to the risk scoring reports.
Absolutely. We really appreciate the feedback we've been getting from all the community, and we are working to make adjustments based on your inputs. So when something is quick and we can get it out there, we are trying to respond as fast as we can. Some of the other suggestions we've gotten are great, but they may take a little bit more time for us to address. So we hear you, and we really appreciate your engagement and feedback.
All right, great, thank you. All right, thanks everybody for joining, Melinda. Thank you so much for helping with this, and it was really great to present this. I hope it was clarifying for the sites. And just so you know, they love hearing from you too, Melinda. All right, thank you
everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Take care, and we will see you soon. Thanks again. Thank you, IQVIA, for everything too. All right, bye guys.